Supatipanno yasa bhagavato savata sangho Dhammayam bhagavantam sadhamam sasangam Ime sakare yadaro Aulopite lahi pujaya Sadhuno bhante bhagava Sujira parini buddhopi Pajima janata nukam bhanayasa Ime sakare dukata panaka Prabhute patikan ato Amma kandi garatam Yataya sukhaya Aram Samma Sambuddho Bhagavan Buddhan Bhagavantam Abhivadi Samakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhamman Namasarami Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghan Namayami Ayam Buddha Samagavato Bhagavakanamakarandaro Mase Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Very good, very nice to see you all. So please now everyone take a good posture, sit up well. Make sure that both body and mind are alert and you're prepared to remain absolutely still for the next 55 minutes or so. And cameras on, everyone, please, if you have them. So, we'll commence by bringing to mind the Buddha and reminding ourselves of our great teacher and inspiration. We'll recollect some of his amazing qualities, especially that perfect mind of his. A mind that was not only clear of all forms of defilement, or greed, or anger and hatred, and especially all delusion, but far distant from all of it. A mind too of infinite compassion. A truly amazing being, perfect in knowledge and contact. Now, as we remind ourselves of the Buddha's abilities and qualities, we should be inspired to do our best to follow in his footsteps and try and do, at least to some extent, what he did. And that means, of course, working with our minds, clearing our minds. And to do this is, of course, a great service that we're doing ourselves, and indeed everyone with whom we come in contact. We're doing ourselves a kindness. And that's also a quality that we should be cultivating. Kindness, loving kindness for ourselves. And that isn't to be selfish and egotistic. It means what it says, to be kind. And to be kind, you have to be understanding. And it's about understanding that this whole practice revolves around. We'll be doing some work in a minute to help ourselves to understand ourselves. But for now, realize that, of course, you're not perfect. And those around you who sometimes upset and offend you are also obviously not perfect. And like you, can't help doing things that are regrettable. That's how it is. That's how it is for you too now. But later, in the future, it could all be different. And that will depend on how you train yourself now, what you do now. So understand yourself well, be kind to yourself, understand others, be kind to them too. And help yourself, and if you can, help others to do better and to be better. Now we'll just take a moment to remind ourselves too of our human condition. This is something we live with, but we are apt to ignore or forget. Our human condition. We're living a life which, of course, is subject to change, and that means aging. We're all getting older, and it can't be helped. We can do nothing about it. Life hath but one direction, and time's its only measure. And of course we can become unwell at almost any time. And it's questionable even whether we are ever truly in perfect health. And of course, we all know, though we may not want to think about it, that one day we're going to die. And so are all our loved ones, friends, relatives, everyone. All that lives must die. So, just check that you're still sitting up well, good posture, perfectly still, and quite deliberately now gather and concentrate your mind. And direct your attention to your body, your physical form. Just be aware of this solid presence that you sometimes believe is you, or at least yours. And be aware of the shape that it's taking. And be reminded that within this solid physical form, there are fluids. And a number of organs and parts that are all somehow suspended within a framework of bones. And most of this you will never see, but it's all there with you all the time. You get up with it, you go to bed with it. And also within this physical form there is warmth and heat. And even as you're trying to be perfectly still, there is within it movement, air that's coming and going, entering and leaving. So be mindful and aware of that rhythm of breathing in and breathing out. And however and wherever you perceive the breath, fix your attention there. And just be aware, mindful and aware as you breathe in and as you breathe out. Keep your mind just there, doing that and only that. Try to stay absolutely still. And if anything at all interrupts your concentration, whether it's an ache or a pain, a desire to move, a wandering thought, a dream, or anything at all, don't follow it. Stay still and simply be mindful and aware of it, know it, watch it, let it go. And find the breath again. And again, keep your mind following each in-breath and each out-breath. Mindful and aware of that simple rhythm, breathing in, breathing out. If there's another interruption, do the same. But stay still. So please keep your very still and very good, very alert posture. And during the next few minutes while I'm talking, all you have to do is to sit, be still, and listen. So, at one of my recent prison groups, someone told me of a criticism he'd read of a certain group of Buddhists who were very, very keen, almost to the point of obsession, on meditation. But they didn't do much else. And the critic had pointed out that really there ought to be a more rounded practice. And in fact, that person apparently writing had favored a kind of constant sort of practice, but somehow or other, the purpose seemed to have become a bit blunt. So what did I think about this? He asked this particular man. And I had to say that to some extent, I agreed with that person criticizing that group, but not entirely. You've heard me, some of you, several times here talking about the purpose of our practice. Being aware of the super-objective, what it's really for, the direction in which it's supposed to be going. I think that's important because, you know, it's very easy to get lost and wander off down pleasant pathways that end up taking you really nowhere. And I observe quite a lot of people having a sort of interest in meditation, but with no real purpose to it, just almost like another sense pleasure. So I believe it's important to keep in mind your purpose. And of course, the purpose, the super objective of Buddhist practice has to do very much with enlightenment and the freedom from suffering. So keep that in mind. That's the direction. That's why we do this. But it's perfectly true that there has to be more to it than simply sitting in meditation. And when you look at what the Buddha taught, first of all, the Noble Eightfold Path, and just that section of the path concerned with morality, right speech, right action, right livelihood. Now there's a lot there to be doing, a lot there to be trying to improve on. That alone gives your practice a much more rounded aspect. You're taking your practice there into your daily life. Because, of course, frequently during your day, you're talking to people, you're answering questions, you're making statements. And doing all of that, you need to be truthful. And you have to somehow avoid getting caught up in gossip, which is, of course, a great pleasure for many people. And sometimes when you're annoyed, you have somehow to avoid being abusive and unpleasant. There's a lot there, just in observing right speech. And right action too. Like good speech, right action needs to be harmless, doing no harm. And then we come to livelihood. Well, for most people, livelihood occupies a great deal of their time and energy. Because, of course, you have to somehow keep a roof over your head, clothes on your back, food in your stomach, and when you're unwell, you have to do something about it. And all of that, for all of that, there is a cost. Now, livelihood, I often think that many Buddhists don't pay enough attention to right livelihood. And I can understand why, because getting a good job can be difficult. And often I've seen people think to begin with that their livelihood was, okay. But then as time's gone on, they've begun to realize that bits of it are not so okay. That do include persuading people to buy something or have something that they don't really need or really want. The livelihood can start to involve deception. And so I can see people being a bit wary of right livelihood because, of course, they don't want to give up their job or their profession, which can mean an awful lot to them. But you ought to look into it. This is how you can broaden your practice. To be careful of how you speak, what you do, and your livelihood. And then if we go to another very useful summary of Buddhist practice, Dana, Sila, Pavana. Generosity, ever so important. Those of you who were here the other night, you heard me talk about the school party that had been here, and how they'd asked me what I really remembered most about Ajahn Chah, how it affected me most. And I answered, it was his generosity. And he wasn't dashing about doing things for people and giving people things. It was a deeply rooted generosity. Now think about that. What else, what is for all of us deeply rooted in us? Greed, wanting, desire, craving, and aversion. Generosity goes against all that, undermines all that. Generosity has a tremendous power. And of course, it affects your practice. I mean, think about the practice of morality. Without generosity, you can become very unpleasant, disapproving of this, not liking that, looking down on that person. All that aversion. Your morality becomes almost a vehicle for aversion, for anger, for unpleasantness. With a generous mind, you accept that people are imperfect, just as you are. And you're that much more understanding and kinder because of it. And generosity brings to your practice a certain freedom and energy in which your practice can really begin to blossom. Dana, Sila, Pavana. Sila, morality again. Pavana, one of my favorite words. Cultivation. It's translated sometimes as mental development, which seems to me a bit limited. Cultivation. Just like you cultivate your garden, you learn to know it, to love it, to nurture it. You have to deal with the weeds, with the things in your garden that are affecting the flowers and plants that you really need, that you want to blossom there, to make your garden a thing of beauty. You have to deal with those. And you have to live with your garden to really understand it and enable it to flourish. And the same with your mind. You observe it. You get to know it. You learn to love it. You encourage it. You encourage it to do better, to be better. I say your mind, your attitude, yourself, you. This is how to really flesh out and cultivate your mind and your practice. But you don't lose sight of that super objective. You're not doing this just to be, a bit nicer and all that. There is still this purpose there. I remember a group of monks I knew, very intent on doing their monastic life very nicely, living in the forest, acquiring the certain skills of the forest monks, and somehow being very content with all that. And I felt losing sight of the purpose. It was a bit like they were kind of administering with their practice a sort of butter knife approach, when really to get where you need to get to, you need a scalpel. I think it's important to keep in mind where you're going, that super objective. But at the same time, to understand that you have to round out and flesh out your practice and make it, as far as you possibly can, a constant experience. And one that is deeply rooted in loving kindness and generosity. So, I think that's enough from me for tonight. We'll sit for a moment or two longer, and during these closing moments, please focus your mind on loving kindness for yourself and for others. May you and all beings be well and happy. May you and all beings be free from all suffering. May you and all beings realize for yourselves the secure peace of Nibbana. Arahant Samma Sambuddho Bhagavan Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivade Samakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhamman Namaskar Supatipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sangham Namami. So thank you all very much. Very nice to see you again. And I hope you have a good week. Good night.